Howdy YouTube, I'm Dan from Dan's Fish, and I'm going to do something that I've never done before, which is a product review. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I recently I ran into a situation where I really needed some help, and I found a product that I think might help. I hope it'll help, and so I'm going to review it. And it is Dr. Tim's One and Only, Dr. Tim's One and Only. This right here. And there's, let me tell you how I ran into this situation. So, I have never done fishless cycling before. I've never needed to because I've always had lots of tanks, and there's always excess filters in those tanks that are already fully cycled. And so anytime I did a new tank, I would just grab a sponge filter or something, or a spawning mop, or some kind of medium that had a bunch of bacteria in it, nitrophine bacteria, and I would throw that into the new tank and add maybe a little ammonia for a couple days, so I guess a little bit of fishless cycling, but then it'd be ready to go. So I never had to worry about this. But what I'm doing now is something a little different. I'm doing a new Discus setup. So I have 17 tanks that I've set up for Discus. They range from 30 gallons on up to 120 gallons. And so with Discus, I'm a little paranoid, and I didn't want to put anything in there that had touched other fish. I started with a sterile environment. So the tanks aren't new, but I sterilized them. I use hydrogen peroxide for that because the residue, once the process is done, is just water and air. So hydrogen peroxide is pretty safe. Sterilized everything. The Discus system is on its own system completely. Each tank drains individually. They're not on a central sump system, anything like that, because Discus can be a little touchy, and you want to give them the best care possible. So I didn't want to grab an old filter. I didn't want to grab an old spawning mop or something that already had a bunch of nitrophine bacteria in it and put it in the new Discus setup, in case it had a disease in it, or in case it had something in it that would affect the Discus. So I started from zero, and I started back in January. It's now March 22nd. So I've spent a long time cycling these tanks, and it took about 6 weeks to get any results at all. I started out with about 1/3 of a milliliter of ammonia per 10 gallons, and after 6 weeks that was gone, and the nitrites from that had been processed into nitrates, so I was good. So then I spent the next while bumping that up. So then I put in about 1/2 a milliliter of ammonia per 10 gallons. And then I eventually got up to the point where I put in 1 milliliter of ammonia per 10 gallons, and that's where I ran into trouble, and that was just a little while ago. I think what happened was I put that in, and that must have been enough ammonia that it was actually a little bit toxic to the bacteria, even though they eat ammonia. Too much of it will kill them. It's a sterilizer, right? Use it for cleaning. And so I think that's what I did. I put too much in, and I think I slowed down the bacteria, and then put too much in again, and just overnight like that, a few days ago I realized, hey, this cycle I've been working on for weeks, actually months, it's just been destroyed. I killed it. So I had heard recently about Dr. Tim's products. I was listening to a podcast called Aquarium I think, is what it's called, and they had an interview with him on that. And so I got online and started Googling like crazy to see if there was a video. And there's lots of YouTube video reviews of it working. There's lots of testimonials, and then there's scientific papers and things. Plus, he's from UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara, which is where I did some graduate work in my studies. So anyway, it seemed like if anything was going to work, his stuff would. So I bought that bottle of, what is it called exactly? Dr. Tim's Aquatics One and Only. This is a lot. This is 64 ounces. This is a few $100, and I had to get it overnighted to me, which was like $105. So this stuff isn't cheap. But I have thousands of dollars of Discus, 17 tanks worth of Discus coming in a few days. Today is Thursday. They're going to be here Monday. And I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't delay the shipment. My supplier has already got things lined up and going, so at this point it would be horrendously unfair to stop the shipment. And my agent at the Denver airport, which is where they're coming in at, has things all lined up and ready to go, and money has been paid and all these things. So it's not really an option right now to delay the shipment. So to get these cycled, I bought that product. It came yesterday, and about 24 hours ago, I put it in the tanks at the recommended dosage. So after that, I put in ammonia up to about 2 parts per million, as recommended. And so I'm going to test it today, 24 hours later, see if anything happened. It's my hope that by Monday, these tanks are cycled. Now, I do a lot of water changes, and on the Discus I'll be doing 50% twice a day, in the morning and the evening. So I suppose what I will do, if they aren't fully cycled, is I'll do another water change at lunchtime, midday. And so 50% 3 times a day, I think I'll be all right. But the problem is that'll keep it so clean that I don't know if the tanks will really cycle for me. So I'm gonna try. I've tried this product, and I'm gonna test it now, and I'll share the results with you. What I use to test, and I know a lot of people are gonna have a problem with this, but I use these, the Tetra test strips. I buy them by the 100. Since January, I've gone through a few bottles of these, and I use the 6-in-1 because that tells me nitrite and nitrate along with some other parameters, and then I also use the ammonia test strips. Now, the reason some people are probably going to have an issue with this is because the test strips are thought to be less accurate than some of the liquid reagents, the API test kits and other things. And that might be true. But what I'm doing when I do this with the test strips is I'm not expecting a spot-on accurate result. I just want to see, is the ammonia going down or not? Because if it's going down, that's enough to tell me that the bacteria are working, that the colony is establishing, and that the ammonia is being processed into nitrite and that into nitrate. So I'm just looking for levels. Is it lower than it was yesterday? And if it's not, I know it's not working yet. So that's what I'm looking for. So for me, these work just fine. The other thing is, if you have lots of tanks, especially if you're starting a new system from scratch, 17 tanks for Discus and then 6 more tanks that I started that I'm not putting anything in, but I have in case I need hospital tanks or I need to separate some Discus or anything like that. And if I don't, then maybe I'll just get some, angelfish or something and put them in there, or rams, something like that. This room's hot. This room's about 86 degrees, which keeps the water temperature at about 84 degrees when you factor in evaporation. So you need warm water fish. But anyway, when you have that many tanks, you don't want to do liquid test kits because it takes forever. You have to test each tank, and you have to shake the bottle for 30 seconds or a minute or whatever the instructions are and put it in, and then time it for however long it is. I forget. I haven't used API as liquid kits on this system, so since January I haven't used them. But it takes a while to test a lot of tanks, so it's not feasible. You can spend hours trying to test all the tanks and get all the parameters measured, and who has that kind of time? So I use the test strips, and they give me an indication. And if something's way off, then yes, then I would go back and use a liquid test kit to get a more accurate measurement if I felt that was merited. And the other thing about the liquid test kits is, some of them are more accurate than others. Some of them are very expensive, all that. So I don't know if they're all more accurate than test strips or not. But anyway, these work for my purposes. So So that's what I'm going to do right now. A little trick, opening these with one hand, with these, and I learned this working in fish stores and for wholesalers and things, is that you can take these strips and you can cut them in half. So I usually do that. So I've pre-cut a whole jar at a time while I'm watching TV or something. So these are a lot thinner than your average test strip because I've cut them in half. So actually I can show you something. I don't think I cut them all in the 6-in-1. I cut them all in the ammonia. I'm going to cap this. If you don't cap these right away, by the way, they'll pick up the ammonia if there's any in the air, in the environment, and they'll start to turn on you. So it's important that if you're not using, that as soon as you've taken out the strips, that you recap these bottles, because these suckers will start to process anything that they come in contact with. And I've done that in the past. I learned this the hard way, where I took out several test strips and put them aside. It was going tank to tank to tank. And then when I came back, I noticed that the pile of test strips that I'd taken out, that they were already turning green because they had picked up some ammonia that was in the air. So anyway, so here's the, let me see if I can get this. It's hard with one hand. So this is the normal test strip, and then I just cut it in half lengthwise, and I get 2 for the price of 1. So, you know, they're a little pricey, especially when you're testing a big system, so I don't feel guilty about doing that. And by the way, when you're in this as an industry, not just a hobby, and you're going through lots of things, food, test strips, all your equipment and all your supplies, things get really expensive really quick. And if you're trying to keep your prices down and competitive, there's not a lot of profit on fish, guys. You know, there's a lot of upkeep, a lot of costs that you don't get with dry goods or selling electronics or other things like that. And so you got to keep your prices down, and that's why working in the pet stores and the wholesalers and things like that kind of picked this trick up along the way. So I'm going to put the camera down. Well, I'll do one in case you've never used these strips before. Yeah. So give me a sec. Let me find which tank I want to do. So if you look at these, see all this? This is like through the whole process. These are, I started taking really detailed notes each day of how much ammonia, nitrate, and nitrate was built up in these tanks. So all right. So yesterday, I apologize. It's not the 22nd. It's the 23rd. Yesterday was the 22nd. And on the 22nd, we'll do this one. This tank had 2 parts per million of ammonia because I put some in right after I put the all-in-one in. So, see, this is already turned. Oh, that's an old one. That's why. Yeah, I'm doing well today. That's an old test strip that I put there yesterday when I tested the 2 parts per million of ammonia. So, all right. So again, trying to do this one-handed. I have a tripod and monopod coming, which I think will help a lot with this. But so here's my test strip. It's currently a yellow color. I don't know if that's showing very well, but if I put this in here, just in the tank, swirl around for 10 seconds ish. I'm watching my time count on the video here, so I know when it's been about 10 seconds. Okay, we should be good. Then I kind of give it a smack to dry it off a little bit, and then I'll test it. So that really hasn't gone down. I don't know if you can see that, but maybe from 2 to 1. Yeah, it's gone down a bit. It's gone down a bit, maybe 1 part per million. So I guess what that means is that the stuff is working, not as fast as I kind of hoped. But I'll test it again tomorrow and see if it's gone down more. And one other thing while I'm here is I'll just test the 6-in-1 for nitrites and nitrates. See where we're at on there so I can get a baseline, because if those are increasing, then I know the ammonia is being processed. So got this one here that I took out just a little while ago. These you just dip in and then you just set them down for 30 seconds to 60 seconds. So yeah, we'll wait for a few seconds here to get an accurate reading, and then I'll test it against the color chart here and see where we're at. The other thing about these 6-in-1 test strips that I like, I guess this is 2 product reviews. I wasn't planning on talking so much about test strips. Is that, so here is a water storage system. So water comes in these pipes into these filter systems, and the chlorine is removed from these, you hope, and then it goes down and into this 300-gallon storage system. And then from there, I can easily pump the water out to these tanks. And so one thing that I'm always worried about is the carbon in these. Is it used up? Is there still enough carbon in there to process the chlorine from my water? I live in this kind of beautiful place in Wyoming where we get really nice, clean water. The mountains where it comes from are just, I can see them from my house, and it's snow runoff, and it's really nice. And there's not a lot of chlorine in there, but there is enough to kill a fish for sure. And so I can test the chlorine level with these 6-in-1 test strips too. So once a week or so, I'll dip a strip in there before I pump it to the tanks, and before it's been circulated and gassed off and everything. I'll dip the strip in there as soon as this is filled up. I'll fill it up, put the strip in. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then I'll, just so I can see if there's any chlorine showing. Because the moment there's any chlorine showing at all, I know I need to replace these. So far, I haven't been able to do that. I haven't had to do that. I'll run these 6 months or so. And then, in 6 months or so, what I'll do is I'll just move this one, this is the second one in the system, the filter in here to here, the first one, and then put a new filter in this one. How these work is they take about 80% of the chlorine out. So the water doesn't have a lot of chlorine, it comes in here, 80% is taken out, and then it moves to this one, 80% of this one is taken out. And so by the time it comes down into here, there's very little chlorine left. Anyway, time to look at these test strips. And so I'm going to do this, sorry, it's going to be hard to show you at the same time, but there's about 10 parts per million nitrate, and there's quite a bit of nitrite, so it is definitely being converted. There's 3 parts per million of nitrite in there. So I'm going to record that when I'm done making this video, yeah, so tomorrow I'll know what the progress is. And then I'll do that with some of these other tanks as well. And my hope is that by Monday, when those Discus land here, that the cycle is complete. Now, if it's not, if like today's Thursday, if by Saturday morning it's not, I've still got this half full. So I'll put another dose in. Supposedly you can't overdose with that stuff. It's just bacteria. Nitrifying bacteria on a very tiny particulate-like medium that it's grown on, because the bacteria that we use for the nitrification, for the nitrite cycle, what is it called? The nitrate cycle, the ammonia to nitrite cycle. I don't know the official term. Is I believe the term is benthic. It grows on surfaces. That's why you need a filter like a sponge filter or a matin filter or whatever filter medium you're using, with lots of surface area. So lots of bacteria have lots of places to grow. So Dr. Tim has created this kind of micro surfaces for them to grow on, which is kind of smart. So anyway, I hope that this product works. Today's the 23rd, and so tomorrow, Friday the 24th, I'll check in and I'll let you know where we're at. All right, talk to you then. Bye.